7 minute pod. Sitting in my car, gonna try this Google recorder or whatever. Um, Basically, what happened is the news keeps changing. Like I said, to a lot of people's outrage, what feels like 2 weeks ago, maybe it was 10 days ago. I don't want Jimmy Butler at any cost. And people were DMing me, and people were like, what do you mean? I can't believe you'd say that. Wow, this is crazy. Not you. I know that ain't who I think it is. Like all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I'll do 5 minutes on this. And then immediately it switches to Beal, right? And I think I've been pretty transparent that I haven't watched that much NBA. I didn't watch that much NBA in November. I've been watching kind of quite a bit since then, but just, I didn't make the rules. They made it just completely irrelevant to watch these games. And so the Beal things comes up, and it was a rare time where I'm like, well, man, maybe I'm just wrong because everybody's like Bradley. People were talking about Bradley Beal like he was the worst player in the league, and I'm like, oh wow, man, he must have really fell off. This must be like one of those wash clay years with the war. I was like, and then I looked at his numbers, and he's shooting like 49 from the field and 40 from three or something like that. So I didn't quite get that. I don't even want to talk about as we sit right here at halftime. I don't even want to talk about the Chris thing because either we'll talk about this. Kendrick and all them want to do like a trade deadline show. It's kind of whatever because the trade deadline. I can't imagine that Chris or Brooke or anybody is traded or Bobby is traded right at the deadline. In which case, you're probably gonna get me like ducking into a bathroom at work or something. Like it was with the Dame thing. Um, I so I've been shocked by a lot of things. I've been shocked by how emotional. I mean, it's sports. I guess people should be emotional. I've been shocked at how emotional people were. Like Cool J, a bunch of people were basically saying like, I don't ever want to see like I'll throw myself on a building if I ever see Chris like on another team, kind of stuff. And people I don't normally associate with being emotional. People have been like super like people do understand that if we trade him, it's not like he's beheaded, right? He just takes his hundreds of millions of dollars to another team, and like they can't take 2021 away from us. Like it's not the Heisman, like they can't take it away. So that was kind of odd, but it was also odd to me. And I'm just kind of coming to the realization that all you guys are just emotional punks about this stuff. Like the 0 for 4 didn't mean people were like 0 for 4. Oh, he looked so cooked in this 0 for 4 game against the Clippers, and that didn't move me either. And I watched a good amount of that. Like none of this is proof positive. What are you chumps doing with your small data points after years and years and years of this? But I am like you got me back into this because then I listened to Simmons with who was on it? Oh, KOC came back, so I'm back to like listening to hot NBA talk, and now the juices are flowing again because I'm listening to like NBA talk at work, and they talked about Zach LaVine's like off one dribble numbers and his catch and shoot numbers and all this kind of stuff, and basically the case was made that like forget last year where he was hurt 4 out of the last 5 years. He's like stone cold all star, and people are thinking about another Zach LaVine and blah blah blah. So there's that. And also, no shade to Twitter or Reddit or any of the things, but still, when I want unhinged analysis, but also just a bunch of people, just the nerdiest people fighting over nothing, like Real GM is still kind of the place to go. And so I just checked into all this kind of stuff. But again, all these other people, good for you that you can still like jump up and down, ping pong over 82 games. That seems really silly to me at this point. But I guess I will. I had been thinking about the Butler thing, and I guess I'll just make this take. Hopefully, this doesn't apply to us, but like maybe it will. And I think even the last week has just shown he's just shown more of his butt, and it's just it's become more, the whole situation has become more untenable. And I've been thinking about T.O., and I started to make this point, um, but I didn't get to make this point. But I just really want to make this, especially because you guys are more emotional than me about this stuff. And so I want to go back to T.O. Like, I was live for the whole thing. Is it even possible that some people now are too young to even know about the whole T.O. and Donovan McNabb thing? But to summarize it, to Terrell Owens and Donovan McNabb thing, Donovan McNabb, I'm pretty sure was the second pick out of the draft. In Syracuse, I forget if this was the Culpepper draft. Bunch of quarterbacks go in the draft. Culpepper second out of Syracuse. I'm pretty sure about that. I forget who was one. If you're an Eagles fan, it's the most natural sports thing happens, where you get this guy and he's this classy guy and you think he's going to be good, and so you draft McNabb and you want him to be so good, and he's pretty good, and he's hard to bring down. And if you don't know who it is, basically kind of imagine, you're not imagining Dak Prescott, but you're imagining a Dak Prescott kind of performance. Hopefully what we hope is not like a Jordan Love kind of performance. But like, Donovan McNabb was hard to bring down and kind of a bowling ball, but he was nowhere near as elusive, or he wasn't big, right? And he had terrible mechanics. And so 2 or 3 times a game, like, there'd be a tight end or there'd be like a running back, and he'd like crank his body and the ball would like land at the guy's feet. But he could throw a bomb, and he was brave in the pocket. And like 4th and 26, we remember 4th and 26, but he scrambled. He was good in cold weather. And they had Andy Reid, and everybody thought Andy Reid was a pretty good coach. This wasn't this Andy Reid, right? But everything that we kind of consider should be from the fans' perspective. Just imagine if you're an Eagles fan, right? So you got this guy. Oh, and then like I'm assuming people know about this. I feel like I have to explain this dude's whole career as I'm sitting in a car in the dark and the cold. But I do think it is somewhat related to the Chris thing. The Rush Limbaugh thing happens, right? So at a certain point, for whatever reason, Rush Limbaugh is like moonlight. Actually, it's kind of not too dissimilar from the Stephen A. Smith thing in a certain kind of way. It's like Rush is the inverse of that, where Rush Limbaugh is like on NFL Countdown, or he's on one of these shows as like the 5th guy. So not even like the Strahan guy, like the Gronk guy. He's like, again, I don't even remember ever seeing it because it came and went so quick. But Rush Limbaugh says something that nobody wants to hear and the streets don't want to hear, but something that was patently true, which is basically that, Donovan McNabb isn't that good. But he's pretty good. And it's like the Chris thing. It's like all these things. It's like the big dog thing. It's like all of these things. Hopefully it's not like the Jordan Love thing. It's the most difficult thing in sports for a sports fan to deal with. It's really hard for us to deal with pretty good players, because your nature as a sports fan is always going to be, you want him to be better than he is, right? And when you have a good game, you can say, well, he should be better, and you want him to be better. You're really, it's Glenn Robinson. He's better than Grant Hill. I'm sure he's better than Grant Hill. He just wasn't, right? But he was pretty good. He was pretty good. He could have like 38 against the Bulls, it's the same thing. Like, and that's on a side point to the side point to the side point. That's kind of a reason why we were all better served when the media was more adversarial, because when the media says something, especially when you're younger, when the media says something that you don't like about your guy, well, then that makes you like your guy more. It makes you hate Michael Bauman or Gary or whoever your local guy, or you hate the national guy, or you hate Stephen A. or any of these guys. But like, you need people saying, that's what one of the functions inside the NBA. Like, if you're a Durant fan and like Shaq and Barkley are killing them, it makes you like your guy more. It polarizes you into liking your player. And so 10 years of Donovan McNabb, and like, so the Eagles fans was pretty, this was before they had won anything. They never won anything with McNabb. More on that later, right? But but they were always in the NFC Championship game, and then they'd win these games, they'd win these playoff games like 13-10, but like it was clearly all defense. They were basically like that version of the Eagles was like the Steelers. They had a lot of great linebackers and safeties and stuff, and they had good running backs, but they weren't really. It wasn't as much as like this version of the Eagles that's in the Super Bowl. But it was the same kind of thing. Like the quarterback, it's a lot like Hurts actually. The quarterback wasn't that good, but also strong upper lower body, and you appreciate the things he can do. And by the way, how bad is he if they keep winning, right? So a really similar kind of thing. And then they get Terrell Owens, who was like the second best receiver, and the only reason he wasn't the best receiver is because, like Randy Moss, and you could argue, fantasy-wise, just everything else, you could argue very much that, like Randy Moss was better when he was getting 4 touchdowns. You could argue on your average day that, like, T.O. was better. But basically a crazy person. And so T.O. comes to the team, and there's all this stuff. So after the fact, we learn all this stuff about the locker room being split, and then at a certain point, I'm pretty sure this dude. It's not. It's a very similar circumstance. Whoever, like the Cornball brother. This is kind of whole thing, like that Donovan, who has like a soft afro and kind of looks like Wanye or whichever guy from Boyz II Men. Like he's not really for the streets. He's not one of us. And somebody at some point, like, was it Chris Carter? Was it the other guy? There's a lot of you know what it's like. That part, the racial part of the locker room part, was a lot like what happened to late career Russ, Danger Wilson with Seattle, where it was like you're not one of us, and this is a defensive team, and like very similar dynamics. But they get T.O. and they go 13-3 or something like that, and then the best thing as a fan, like then you can retroactively be like, oh, they never gave my guy enough. Actually, this is the year that proves that really, if we'd have had a number one receiver this whole time, we'd have won like 3 Super Bowls. And you could say that because they're marching to the Super Bowl. And so you can say crazy. Like if the Bucks win a title this year, it'll be literally 4 seconds before somebody starts saying we should have had 4, titles or something like that. That's just something. I feel like this is probably going longer than 5 minutes. And it's really cold in here. So long story short, too late. T.O. decimates that fan base. And he plays on like a fractured foot or whatever in the Super Bowl, and he plays well, and McNabb throws it, like I think literally throws up on himself. But he was like okay, but just didn't get it done, and there was a lot of plays where like they needed to speed up and they didn't speed up. And it made your guy Donovan McNabb, he played poorly, but it wasn't like awful. It was just he didn't get it done. And Philly fans, as everybody knows, are degenerate savages. And I forget the timeline, so basically then T.O. Jimmy Butler's the whole situation and makes it impossible for you as an Eagles fan. Not only does he not validate the last 10 years, but it goes the other way. Right? Where now you have to pick and choose between people who are clearly better and your guy you've been riding with against Rush Limbaugh and the racists. And you've been riding, you see Michael Vick, there's all these other players, and you've just been riding with this guy. You've been riding with this guy this whole time. And of course, this is not analogous to Giannis, who's been a top 3 player for 8 years or whatever. But I can't imagine, like, later on Philly wins a title, but, like, the thing is, only one team gets to win a title a year. Ultimately, if you have a player for 10 years, you want that to end well. You want Favre to end well. You want Aaron Rodgers to end well. You want Yelich to end well. It doesn't mean that it will. But, like, hey, man, all things being equal, I don't want to feel like a chump for spending a lot of time and money and merchandise and tickets and just a lot of time watching games. You want to at least feel like, hey, that was our guy. He didn't quite get it done, but, Ernie Banks, that was our guy. Hey, Barry Sanders never won jack, right? Like, a whole bunch of people never won jack, but, like, at the very least, you don't want some psycho narcissist who never won a thing and was pretty much kind of a loser with the Cowboys. Like, every time there was a 3rd and 8, he would drop it. And you don't want some narcissist to take over your team if you don't win a title. And so I feel like I've gone long on this. But we're not talking about mortals. We're not talking about Chris Middleton. I have a serious question because, again, we've already won a title. 21 is locked in. And Lord knows I could talk about all the time. Like, we've been talking about Chris and Jimmy so long. We've been talking about Chris and Jimmy since 2017. Since we were talking about trading Chris for like Isaiah Thomas and Kimball Walker and like every version of these trades, right? We've been talking about trading like literally since the first inauguration. Like forever we've been talking about trading Chris. So this is not about Chris. We are now talking about the big dog. So Bucks fans, what's a championship worth to you? If you say only a title matters, blah 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 blah, I get it, right? But and I probably end up ultimately down that road with you also, but really think this out. Are you prepared for Jimmy Butler to be the best player in a finals run? Because he's not better than Giannis, but he's fully capable of being better than Giannis for a finals run. And yeah, it seems soft or seems not masculine or whatever. And like, I mean, I'm over all of this, but really think that through. Finals MVP Jimmy Butler, knowing good and well he's going to burn the thing down the next year and start talking about how he's better. And the stories will start leaking out and they'll go on everybody's podcast and it's this and that. So if you trade for Butler, like obviously I think all these guys can go. Like Chris Brook, Portis, at least two have to go. Like they can all go. I don't think they will go. I think we'll probably stand pat, honestly. But I just wanted to, again, as I'm talking, I don't know if this is interesting to anybody, but really flesh out how it would feel. And we probably won't win, right? We'll lose in the ECF or we'll lose at some other point. But what if we lose and it's like it's not Jimmy Butler's fault, it's Giannis' fault? Because, you know, kind of the great benefit of Chris is they just sort of defer and it's like nobody yells. There's no bench arguments. There's none of that stuff that like I kind of prefer, but there's none of that. But because like Jimmy Butler isn't like a run of the mill narcissist. He's like an insane narcissist. He's like a generational narcissist. That's why and literally does not care. And I don't think I just want people to really game that out mentally. The Lillard's going to leave and at some point and it'll just be like, yeah, I did that thing. It was cool. I wish it would have worked out better, whatever. And so for all you people, like I don't really spend too much time. Like there's no point in talking about. I think a lot of people feel like Giannis could be like a top 10 player or a top 20 player. I'm not invested in that. But keeping it real, if I was younger, I would be. So like I get that part of it. Are you prepared for like seriously, like are you prepared for Jimmy Butler to come in here and just in the way it goes, because like all those years that we wasted 20 and not to, from like 19 and 20 and then 22 onward, all those years we wasted with bad moves or not moving guys or just injuries or just stuff not working out. Are you prepared for the final chapter of that being Jimmy Butler basically one way or another being like Giannis wasn't a winner, or screaming at Giannis because he's not making his free throws, or like fights on the bench or any of this kind of stuff? Because I don't really mind it in a Michael Jordan kind of way, in a Kobe Bryant kind of way. But Jimmy Butler, I'm just telling, Jimmy Butler is nuts. And I don't think people, like, honestly, I don't think people are really prepared for that kind of smoke. And he's old and it's going to end badly. We can win it. So here's what's guaranteed. It will end badly. And you can certainly make the argument that, like, if we win a championship, then great. But it's Sade. Nothing's as good as the first time. It's not going to be the first time. So I also want people to just realize that like the first time is encased in amber. That's just the most beautiful thing. It's not going to be like that again. And if like the spreadsheets and the calculators decide that that's the move to make, go ahead and make that move. But like I don't think it should be controversial to say I don't trust Jimmy Butler not to do that. I think the fit is fine. I mean, it's not like he's really a 3-point shooter. I think he's a winner, and I think it's very possible. But man, and almost worse to me is I don't want to watch. I guess I've been watching a horror movie every single postseason, but I just wouldn't want, like, frankly, I wouldn't want to engage, even if it's going well. Like we acquired Jimmy Butler for whatever, and I gotta read all these stupid. I gotta read all these quotes and all these stupid people. We gotta read all this stuff about how it's cute and all the things. We gotta hear about his coffee and all that. Just knowing that he's Jack Torrance with the axe. Like, just knowing that he's possessed. Like it's just knowing that he's going to bury an axe in Giannis at some point, and it's either before a title or afterwards. If you are willing to go through that door, like, fine. But I don't feel like I heard anybody, like, ever articulate that. And it's always, like, the dark side of the force. It's always people angry. It's always like Chris had a bad game, he sucks. It's not what this absolutely will look like. This dude who has no respect for Pat Riley or any of the kind of the stuff, like it's just like the millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, and he's gonna burn down one of the most respected organizations and coaches and players and all this kind of stuff, and Haslam and all these guys and the whole thing, and it's just about the money, cause Jimmy Butler is Kanye nuts. So, up to me, Zach LaVine seems like the move. I saw something just a minute ago that like Beal somehow has a no trade clause and he's not going to waive it to a cold city. So who knows? The other thing that kind of happened is there's nothing. I don't want to summarize Bob Uecker because I feel like I should almost write something. There's nothing, and that was like a week ago, and there's. Well, I guess I would only say two things. First, in that dark time, I don't think people really fully grasped that he was the biggest star in Wisconsin sports for like 3 or 4 years growing up. And you didn't really know it because of the Miller Lite commercials and Major League and all this kind of stuff. But like pre-Favre and Reggie, yeah, I'd say he was a bigger star than Terry Cummings or whoever the Bucks in Sigma, or whoever the Bucks' best player was before the fall there. But again, I don't want to be too saccharine about it. But honestly, like I have such great memories of in the backyard with my dad and my little brother, and like in my backyard and at our first house in Milwaukee, and just listening to the radio in the background. There's something special about listening, and I do think there is something very Wisconsin about. There was something very Wisconsin about how funny and jovial and friendly, and it's just like the perfect Wisconsin representation. Like he represented, I think, generally the fan base, and just kind of a perfect way. It was a perfect kind of marriage between player and franchise and city and extended city, and I really do think in some small kind of way, like it's just pleasant. Like Wisconsin, like kind of the rep of Wisconsinites being more pleasant or just kind of being more friendly. And he just fit like again, it's nature versus nurture. But part of the reason, like Phillies fans are degenerate savages is because they're raised to be degenerate savages, and they got like 3-year-olds giving the finger to Santa Claus and all this kind of stuff, because that's the culture that, like, that's the self-reinforcing culture. Like, they like that stuff, right? And so if you accept that premise, like, I think Bob Euchre, in his just wry humor and his just pleasant nature, and just kind of like obviously, like, it's kind of teary-eyed moments with all these young players and everything. I do think that in some small, like, kind of butterfly effect way, made people, like, I'm not saying there's never any fights in the stands or any of that kind of stuff, but I do think, like, generally speaking, and like, sometimes we hate it too, right? Like how Lambeau is so nice, but like, all of that stuff lent to like a nicer presentation. Like, we're nice fans generally. Sometimes I always wish we were louder, but we're generally nice, drunken fans. And Bob Euchre was the Pied Piper for all that kind of stuff. So again, not a eulogy, but yeah, that's pretty sad news. And but he got up, he got out of here, and it was he will be missed. I feel like that was, hopefully this recorded. I don't even know if it's recorded. Let's see here. Looks like it's still going. 26 minutes. Zip it up, zip it out.